Good morning, how are we doing today? My name is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit. Welcome back to another video. And today we're going to go through the pot geometry when betting section of the Postflop workbook, go through page 174 together, and without further ado, let's jump right into it. Alright, so beginning with the prompt up above, we're playing a 5-10 cash game. You open to 30 from the cutoff, they call on the button, and everyone else folds. So here's the situation. And every single page in this section of the workbook is going to be split into two. So the first question is, what happens when you implement one bet sizing strategy? And number two is same situation, but different bet sizing strategy. That way you can compare how slightly different bet sizing strategies, or sometimes very different bet sizing strategies, can influence things like your bet sizes on each street or the final pot size. This can be very, very helpful. Now, I will say this, if you've never done this kind of work before, like honestly, you've never really looked at how every single bet size on every single street is going to influence every single pot size of every street and the final pot size in general, if you haven't done this kind of work before, do this entire section by hand and with a calculator. Don't use an automated tool like we're going to do in this video. The reason is because when you do it by hand, it can really help the patterns get found a little bit more easily, and also those kind of things can stick in you a little bit more strongly. At least that's what I've found in the past. So seriously, if you haven't done this before, we're going to do this page with an automated tool, but you should definitely make sure that you do some of these by hand. You can use a calculator, but don't use an automated tool like a spreadsheet like the one we're going to do in this video. Okay. With that said, let's run through 1 and 2 together. All right, so the table is going to be the exact same for questions 1 and 2. You have the pot size to start the street, which we see right this moment is 75, right? Our 30 open, their 30 call, 60, plus the dead blinds, which folded, equals plus 15, so $75 in the middle, and here we go. And then what we're doing is we're filling out everything per street. So for the flop, the turn, the river, and we're going to go through the bet size that we make after they call, what is the pot size, and then what is the effective stack after they call. So in this situation, we're taking a 70% bet strategy on every single street. And if we just pull up a calculator real quick, we could take $75 times 0.7, right? Because we're betting 70%. And you see that comes out to 52.3, rounds up to 53. Sorry, 52.5, rounds up to 53, and here we are. And obviously the pot size after they call is going to be 53 times 2, right? Our bet plus their call, plus the original 75, and that's going to be the exact same number you get here that goes right here, pot size to start the next street. And then the effective stack left after they call, well, we have to do the effective stack, so it's the smallest of the stacks involved right this moment. The button has 1200, we have 1455. Well, that means they have the smaller stack, and as such, the effective stack is 1200. So in order to find out the effective stack left after they call, we would do 1200 minus 53, because that's how much they would call right this moment, and that gets us 1147. Perfect. And if we just pull out the automated tool, there's just a couple of different numbers that we have to modify in this situation. The starting effective stack, like we just talked about, is 1200. And pot size to start the street is $75. And we are implementing a 70% pot bet strategy on each street. So 0.7 on the flop, 0.7 on the turn, 0.7 on the river. Excellent. And you notice that some of the numbers that we already did are already in there, right? 75 at the top, 53 for the bet size, and 1147 for the effective stack left after they call. And then we can just fill in the rest of these. So 181, 181, again, those two numbers are always going to be the same thing. 127, because that's 70% of 181. Again, that number times 2 plus 181 gets us to 435. We know that's going to be the same number. And let's just do the rest of these real quick. 305, pot size after they call the river bet, and 715 for effective stacks left after they call the river bet. Perfect. Excellent. Now let's do number 2 together. All right, so the sizing strategy in number 2 is full pot, so 100% on each street. And you notice that most of these numbers are going to stay very, very similar, right? The starting effective stack is still 1200. The pot size to begin the street is $75 on the flop. And the main thing we're changing here is percentage of pot. So instead of 0.7 for 70%, we're going to change this to 1 because we're betting full pot. And then let's start filling in all the numbers and seeing how things compare. So your bet size, obviously 100% of 75 is 75, and 75 times 3 in that situation, 2 1/4, and 1125. And then we're just going to start ripping through the rest of these and see what's going on. And that makes it 675, 675. Effective stack left after they call. 5, 20, 25, and 675. Perfect. All right, so if we're looking at what's going on here, a couple of the big numbers that you really want to pay attention to are obviously your bet sizes on each street. So in this situation, 53 when we're only betting 70% pot, but a full $75 bet when we're betting full pot on each street. And that's not a massive difference, right? Only $22. But then notice the bet sizes on the river, right? When you're using the 70% strategy, it's a $305 river bet. Whereas if you're using the full pot strategy, $675 on the river bet. That's more than double, which is really, really important to know, right? Because it's not like we're talking about a twice as large bet size on every single street in terms of like full pot versus 0.7 pot. But this is something that a lot of people just wouldn't ever really fully understand, how those small changes in bet or raise size can really influence different things like your bet size on each street, the pot size on each street, final pot size, those sort of things. So really make sure you pay attention to that when you're going through this. That would kind of be the biggest takeaway. And again, if you've never done these by hand before, take your time, do a couple of them at minimum by hand, if not, honestly, the entire section and also the entire pot geometry when raising section coming up. So that's how to do this section of the workbook. If you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, enjoy this process, take your time with it, and look for those patterns. See how little things can influence things massively, especially on later streets. So good luck with this. Good luck out there as always, and happy grinding.